sent Patty before was she told me to take out the reference to the Boy Scout wreath.
So I printed it though, and
Oh, they sent Patty before was she told me to take out.
There we go. Got it.
I have them right.
Great. This. Oh, yes. I'm sorry, you have to see it there. Oh.
Yeah, you know, they were just readers, but they're not as strong as this one. These pairs.
Yeah.
So this seems to be.
Normally I have ones at
Well, I have so many pairs, and I had them on my face before I left the house. They could be in the car. However, at least I still can't see you, but I can read. I got walking this morning and my eyes started watering. It was like one eye was crying like crazy and dripping down. I don't know why. Just the one eye.
It's an emotional day. It's the last Bible study, so of 2022. I can see why you'd weep.
Must be it.
Yeah, I was to tears this morning thinking of it.
Oh,
Somebody on Zoom?
Yeah, I sent Anita a note because she usually comes in on Zoom, but maybe she's going to come this evening. I don't know. I was hoping everyone would come this morning so I don't have to come out in the rain tonight. But alas. Well, welcome back. We can all breathe fresh air today. That wasn't an option a couple weeks ago, and I've taken a dip in the
I have to
ocean.
reread it.
Yeah, we have to reread it. Yeah, we've all had Thanksgiving celebrations and start of Advent with Habbukuk of all things. So that was great. That worked out nicely.
that was really the official lectionary.
That was the official lectionary reading. Yeah,
that is so fun.
that was.
Okay.
And it's the one that we're doing today was the reading. So a couple verses off a little bit, but it was basically that reading, yes. So we've gotten, Habbukuk has gone from an introspective kind of, what did I do wrong? God, why are you mad at me at the beginning of the book to, oh, probably not just mad at me, but all of Judah. That's why things are not going well. And kind of wrestling with God, talking with God, having that conversation, to having a vision that, okay, well, we're going to get wiped out by the Babylonians. Things are going to be terrible for a while. And in today's text, we started it last time, actually, hard to remember. Habbukuk sees God coming in to rescue the people of Judah. And so this is, he doesn't really see it as far off in the distance. He thinks it's going to happen in his time. In his time. He's hopeful that it will happen in his time. And that's well, hope is the word of the week, right? That's our candle for this week. And so why don't we just refresh our memory? Does somebody want to, you have it open, Janice? You want to read the first eight verses?
Starting with 8?
No,
Or
one
Starting it with.
yeah, 1
Okay.
through 8, just so that we
Okay.
kind of refresh where we're at and the rhythm of
Okay.
what he's talking about.
Okay. Prayer of Habbukuk the prophet on, I can't pronounce it.
Shigionoth.
Okay. Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, O Lord. Renew them in our day. In our time, make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. And it says Selah.
That means you raise your hands or you
Right.
clap your hands or do
Right.
something. Selah is a
Yeah,
liturgical
but we have to remember
movement.
it's
Yeah, the
Like
people
a
jump
song.
up and say woohoo or something.
Yeah.
We don't know.
His glory covered
Lost
the
it.
heavens, and his praise filled the earth. His splendor was like the sunrise, rays flashed from hand. Where his power was hidden, plague went before him, pestilence followed his steps. He stood and shook the earth. He looked and made the nations tremble. The ancient mountains crumbled, and the age-old hills collapsed. His ways are eternal. I saw the tents of Cushan in distress, the dwellings of Midian in anguish.
Okay, so this really powerful God is coming on the scene to, and all the earth is trembling before him, right? He's this warrior God coming in, and the earth, that there's fire and lightning coming out of his hands, and the mountains are crumbling, and people presume mountains would be there forever, right? They didn't understand erosion. Because what happened in their lifetime, there wasn't a real sense of history. Like we have a sense of history. There was no Grand Canyon, was just a little trickle probably at that point. So God is coming in, and the tents of Cushan and Midian are the tents of the enemy. That's the dwellings of the enemy are trembling. They are shaking with fear because they know God is coming for them. Okay, so that's where we are today. And as God arrives on the scene at those tents, at those dwelling places of the people of Babylon who have been oppressing them, God arrives, conquers, and liberates Judah. In Habbukuk's mind's eye, God takes care of everything. God sets them free from their oppressors. So why don't we read verses 8 through 11? Does somebody else want to read verses 8 through 11?
I will, but it's going to be a whole lot different.
That's fine.
Um,
We like your Bible. It's very interesting.
some things that just aren't in it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Art thou angry with the stream? Is thy wrath against the sea, O Lord? When thou dost mount thy horses, thy riding is to victory. Thou dost draw thy bow from its case, and charge thy quiver with shafts. Thou cleavest the earth with rivers, the mountains see thee and ride with fear. The torrent of water rushes by, and the deep sea thunders aloud. I'm not sure where the verse ends because my marking is
We got to get through the sun and the moon.
Okay. The sun forgets to turn in its course, and the moon stands still at her zenith, at the gleam of thy speeding arrows, and the glance of thy flashing spear.
Actually, your translation is pretty cool because in the, I think this is the NIV? Yeah, NIV. That part there says, the sun and the moon stood still in the heavens at the glint of your flying arrows, the flash lightning of your flashing spear. But I like the idea that they forgot.
Mm-hmm.
They forgot what to do. You know when you're feeling overwhelmed and you forget your own name, somebody asks you after you've had a car accident, maybe, and somebody says, what's your name? What's your birthday? What day is it? You sometimes can't answer those questions very coherently, right? Because you're so addled. And even the sun and the waves, everything, even nature, is addled by God's coming. The moon is forgotten to turn in the heavens. All of nature is in awe of God's coming. So which images in that little section hold impact for you in your Bible, in your translation?
Well, I like the way, like you say, there's this is a very visual description. I mean, it gives you a specific view of that in your mind.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of interpretation in this particular description.
Right. Yeah, whereas mine is like the sun and the moon stood still in the heavens. Okay, that's nice, but The moon forgot to do its thing.
Yeah.
It's very different. Yeah. Kind of lays it out. That is a powerful statement. I like the idea of you split the earth with rivers and the mountains saw you and writhed. That sense of everything being twisted and contorted by God's arrival.
There's a lot of fury and
There's
and
a lot.
and angry kind of energy.
Very angry energy. Yes, yes. Yes, God is coming to seek retribution, right? In this, for what's happened, that the Babylonians they were supposed to do some work for God, but they took it a little further. They forgot who had put them in power. And this is according to Habbukuk, not in real life, but and so now God's going to set them in their place, and they too will be shuddering. If nature is shuddering, they're going to be shuddering in terror of God's coming. So have you ever thought of God that way? Of God coming in with mighty swords, and is that your image?
That's not my image.
Well, you grew up in the UCC, so.
I don't fall into that vision naturally. You know, if you think about it, and you think about, okay, so when chaos as it has reigned in so much of our public life in recent years, you know, and I wish thoughts like this on certain individuals or groups,
Yes.
you know, I don't think of it be coming from God, but it, you know, I don't know where it's coming from. But
That they get their comeuppance somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the closest I could get to saying.
But not necessarily from God.
I don't think of it as direct. You know, I think of it as karma, maybe. You keep it up. You know, your time's coming.
Yeah.
But
Or whoever we consider the good guys rising up and saying, enough.
mm,
You know, we're not going to take that anymore.
but it's hard to think of God that way.
Yeah, I'd rather see God as a calming force.
Mm. Yeah.
But I have often said of lately, God is trying to tell us something. With all the storms we're having, all the killings we're having, is God trying to tell us something that we as humans
Mm.
have not acted the right way, not His way.
Yeah.
And He's trying to tell us something. So I see that side, but I'd rather see it more of a calming force of God.
Yeah.
Than the angry part of God.
That God ushers in the peaceful part.
Exactly.
Yeah, instead of the chaos.
Yes.
More chaos on top of the chaos.
I mean, that's the way I want to see Him,
Yeah. Well,
but I'm not sure if that's the God that is always just like us. We get angry too, you know?
yeah, I think what's interesting, and some people say, oh, I don't like the Old Testament God versus the New Testament God. Well, it's the same God. It's people's experience of God, which is different.
Yeah.
And the people in Old Testament times, you know, it's very tribal living. There's a lot of, you're always under siege by somebody, or you're going to siege somebody. There's just a lot of turf wars happening. And so seeing God or experiencing God as being with you in those battles makes sense, right? It may be independent of who God is, but the people who are writing tend to be, you know, those who've come out the other side of something terrible. The Babylonians, I don't think, wrote too much in the Bible.
No.
You know, but it's just all over again. I mean, it's just human condition, and you have to wonder. I wonder how much of the Bible is just written from too much of a human's point of view, as opposed to what is the reality of God. I don't know that He's a warrior. I think He is. Whatever God is um, basically it's a loving force, and if we can't recognize the patterns of the chaos we create, you know, and the consequences that come with that, then we're doomed to just repeat it forever and ever and ever, and that seems to have been the case. Just in different clothes, different details, but the same story.
Yes. I think we do repeat
Yeah, and I don't know
the
that.
chaos over and over again.
And I don't think that my God is not necessarily the God that he's writing about here.
Mhm.
To answer your question.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not how I would see God either. Although on some days like you, I think, oh, that would be nice.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have God come in and just, lightning bolt a few people here and there, or a group of people here and there. That would be okay. But then that means that lightning bolt could be turned on me too, and I don't think I would, because I'd probably tick off other people, and so the same way they vex me. So I guess I'd rather think of, and my experience of God is the one who brings healing, the one who makes lemonade out of lemons, the one who, when bad things are happening, God's the one who can give me a path to steer out of that storm.
Yeah.
Which is different
Mm.
than one who's going to stir up more stuff. But this is Habbukuk's vision, and it served his people in their time. And this next section is actually a song that he wrote, and it's meant to be, I mentioned this on Sunday, it's meant to be read or sung. It's sung, really. We've lost the music to it, but sung by a congregation as a way of remembering that God will deliver them. God will be there to vindicate them. And so they sing this over and over again, the same way we sing, "Oh, come all you faithful." We're singing, "Come on into the church." Come, O people, because this is the day that God has made, where Jesus is born, right? We sing that over and over again every
Right,
year.
and we sing our hymns, which are
Right, time tested. Well, some of them.
Yeah, right.
The ones that we can sing. Yeah. Okay. So when he asks, "Were you angry with the rivers, Lord? Was your wrath against the streams?" Anger and wrath refer to God's divine anger aroused by human sin. Rage describes this anger overflowing into all of creation as the holy comes riding into view. So there's, it's kind of spilling out, and God's anger at what humans have done. And many years after Habbukuk, maybe that was some of the stuff that the people of Judah had done. Remember, the judicial system was very corrupt at the time. From our early sessions, we learned that. So God's got all this anger about what Judah had done, maybe what Habbukuk had done, what the Babylonians had done, and so God's coming in with all that. It's kind of a kitchen sink anger, if you will. And then God uncovers the bow and calls for many arrows, or shafts, I think it is in yours, Barbara. And God actively engages in war with those who have oppressed the people of Judah. We kind of have this image of God coming in on a chariot, Ben-Hur style, right? Just wiping out, just blasting the enemies with fire and these arrows that are just going to pierce the hearts and skulls, as we will go on to read, of the enemies. We then have the sun and the moon stood still in the heavens. Nature stands still in awe of God's power. As I was reading that, I was thinking, have you ever experienced time standing still when you're maybe in prayer or in a sacred place for you. You like to go on walks, and that's your sacred place. You have a sense of time standing still or losing time when you're in God's presence. You had that?
The only time is, yeah, but not, it's sometimes in moments of great stress when you suddenly sort of just, however briefly, it's like things aren't really happening, or it's just like things stop for a second or two when they actually don't. But in your own head, you can't quite go or get it, or you just, I don't know, I can't describe it. But I've had that experience once or twice, but in some crisis.
How about when, you two sing in the choir, when you're singing and you're really in the moment and just singing, do you have that sense of time just drifting around you and you're kind of out of time just doing, hopefully not out of meter, but that time just kind of loses meaning when you're singing?
I mean, there are definitely times when I'm singing where the resonant, everything just comes together. I feel the resonance through my body, but I don't know that I experience that as a time issue.
You're still aware that the clock's ticking.
I don't think I'm aware of the clock's ticking either. It just, time doesn't factor into that sense of awe, wonder.
Yeah,
I would feel
that makes sense.
more like that listening rather than singing or participating when you get the whole impact of whatever musical piece it is, and when it really enters your head in all of its, because when you're singing, you're thinking, you're working.
Yeah, you are working.
The brain is not dormant because you have to remember
Right.
your part, your key, your timing, your this, your that. But usually, but when you're listening and you're in the audience and you can really appreciate the combined forces of all the musicians or whatever, that is almost the same as time standing still. If it's really,
Yeah.
if the piece really gets you at the right time.
How about you, Janice?
I just think it might happen for me when I'm involved in an activity. And I get so involved in the rhythm of something, like walking.
Mhm.
And I'll look up and I'll say, oh, I'm already at the end of the path. Where did that time go?
Sure.
Because I was so intent on doing it. I also do needlework. So if I'm sitting there, I don't have TV on, I don't have music on, I just sit there and do my needlepoint. And I get lost in the moment of doing it.
Yep.
And I'm not thinking about anything, I'm just rote almost,
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are some ritualistic aspects to
Yeah, that you get
to
lost
listening
in
to
what
music,
you're
to
doing.
singing, to doing the sewing, the needlework. I sometimes, if I'm doing watercolor painting, which I enjoy doing, I can sometimes get lost. And I don't realize that an hour's gone by or something.
Yeah,
And I've just
My
been.
husband says it's with gardening.
Yeah. Martha's
He's
like
a
that. Martha loves
very peaceful
gardening.
time when he's gardening.
Yeah, we never let Martha in the garden before we have to go somewhere, even if it's 2 hours before, because she'll be gone. She'll go, whoa, I've only been out there a few minutes. And well, honey, it's been 110 minutes. So it sounds like we have experienced that timeless feeling as mostly a peaceful thing. Whereas this is kind of a terrifying thing. Although you said in an accident or something, you can sometimes, when the stress is high, you can experience it also. Yeah.
It's kind of like it's not happening to you. It's just, you can separate yourself from the crisis.
Right. In verse 12, in the NIV, it says, "In wrath you strode through the earth." And this is a bit of a shift because we're kind of outside observers of God's coming up to this point. But now the word strode indicates that God has come with a purpose. And God is on a mission. And the anger and the wrath are with the people. Not, you see, and in anger you thresh the nations. So when in wrath you strode upon the earth, and in anger you thresh the nations. So it's not with, he's asked the question above, are you angry at the sea or the rivers and streams? No, it's really with the nations. God's upset about the sinfulness that God sees in the world. Now, I do think that God is still upset with the sinfulness that's going on in the world.
You want to hear what they say here?
Yeah.
This is 12, 13, and 14. With threats thou dost bestride the earth, and trample down the nations in anger. Thou goest forth to save thy people, thou comest to save thy anointed. Thou dost shatter the wicked man's house from the roof down, uncovering its foundations to the bare rock. Thou piercest their chiefs with thy shafts, and their leaders are torn from them by the whirlwind, as they open their jaws to devour their wretched victims in secret. That's
Pretty dramatic.
a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. Nancy, what version do you have?
New Revised.
New Revised? How does that one read? It's probably a little different.
Which verse would you like?
Why don't you go 12 through, what was that? Probably
12,
15.
13, 14.
12, 13, 14.
Okay. In fury you trod the earth, in anger you trampled nations. You came forth to save your people, to save your anointed. You crushed the head of the wicked house, laying it bare from foundation to roof. You pierced with his own arrows the head of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter us, gloating as if ready to devour the poor who were in hiding. It seems like totally different from
Yeah, well, it's got the same flavor. I think the gloating is their jaws are open to devour us. So if you think of somebody, gluttony, eating too much,
But I didn't understand the last three words here, and I did when I heard your version, in secret. Because the wretched victims in secret. I don't know.
they were hiding.
They
Yeah,
were
they're hiding.
hiding.
So the people of Judah are afraid, right? And God is going to drive a spear through the heads of the enemy.
their own spears.
Their own spears are going to be turned against them. Yeah, their own
His head.
elements of war, instruments of war, will be turned against them. Let's go back to you came out to deliver your people, or what is it? To save
Came
your
forth to save your people.
to save your
Save
people.
your anointed.
What's your translation say? Janice, verse 13.
Okay, you came out to deliver your people, to save your anointed one. You crushed the leader of the land of wickedness. You stripped him from head to foot. Is this all?
Good. No, that's good right
it?
there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the word deliver, some you translate as saves, is a word that can be translated as deliver, save, victorious. And so if you're delivered, then that means victory has been yours, right? And the word victorious, there is a leader of the people of Judah named Joshua. Joshua, we know Joshua from the Bible. Joshua is connected with Jesus. Jesus' name means what? The Lord saves. God saves. God saves. So, as Christians, we can take this text and see it continuing into our experience of God. You came out to deliver your people. You delivered and were victorious through Joshua, through Jesus. The Lord saves. Right? To save your anointed one, and in this case, the anointed one refers to King David and his successors. And by successors, that means everyone in David's family that leads up to Jesus. Well, I mean, that's how we read that. That's how we read that. Jewish people probably don't read it like that. But as Christians, we read it that the Anointed One refers to David and his successors. And we kind of stop at the Messiah, Jesus, the Christ. I think Jesus would have extended that into each of us, having that victory, being deliverers in our own right, that we have that power within us, that spirit within us, to deliver our people in our own way with the gifts that we've been given, right? Through teaching, all of you can claim that one. You delivered people through singing, through gardening, through lots of different, bringing beauty into the world. We deliver the people. Habbukuk links the anointed to Moses through creating a pattern linking holy leadership to messianic deliverance. So Moses was a leader who was anointed by God. Those who followed Moses are in succession, and they carry that spirit of deliverance.
Yeah, I wrote Habakkuk looking back and linking the past to the future.
Right. Into his present and into the future. Right. He's pointing to the future.
Like a pattern.
Yeah, like a pattern. So if we were to think of patterns of deliverance in our lifetime, or maybe before our lifetime, if we know stories of grandparents or great-grandparents, what patterns of deliverance have you seen from God in your time? Where have you seen God deliver people?
You mean in our own personal lives?
Yeah, or in the lives of the people around you, in our country, in the world. How have you seen God deliver people? We
Well, I
see.
keep getting images of refugees.
Mhm.
But it's hard to see that as being delivered because their situation is so dire.
And in this country, they're not welcomed.
So they're on a path away from
One horror.
one horror, but I'm not sure I've seen them successfully, totally delivered to anything close to the promised land.
As a group, but there certainly are
Yeah,
exceptions.
yeah.
There are exceptions, sure, but as a group, you're right.
And then I also was thinking about the Holocaust.
Mhm.
And while we read heroic stories of individuals who managed to save a few.
Yep.
In general, that was not a total deliverance.
Wouldn't call it a successful,
So I'm
numerically successful.
I'm torn here trying to find an image
Yeah.
where I see, well, deliverance.
Yeah, but
To something better.
I think from a biblical standpoint, God doesn't, over and over again in the Bible, God doesn't deliver all the people. God delivers a remnant so that the faith can continue. There's a group that will be saved. Not everybody can or will be saved, but God works to make sure that there are people who will preserve enough of the faith that it continues and is passed on to another generation. That happens again and again. In the Bible, you see that a group of people are slaughtered. I mean, even in Jesus' birth time, right? The king goes and slaughters all the other children. Jesus is the remnant in his family who survives. I mean, it's a horrible story. We don't usually tell that part of the story because it would be messy at a pageant. Okay, baby Jesus was born. Now let's slaughter all the other kids who are here. We don't tell that, but that's what happened. And Jesus becomes the remnant that carries on. After Noah's Ark, there were murders and things, and some people came in and killed people, but there was a remnant of faithful who continued and started the next part of the story. There's always a group that starts the next. So in some ways, the refugees who do make it, who are our success stories, it's important that we lift them up so that their story isn't lost and their faith isn't lost, and that they can continue to tell the story for those who will survive and follow them. I know that's not great news. To your point, it's not great news, but it is a pattern that follows through history.
I've never thought of it that way, but you're right.
Nobody would want to. It's a burden I carry. Now I've passed it to you.
Oh, thanks.
I don't want to have to be the only one who has to live with that junk.
But it's true. It's true.
It is true.
And you see it happening again and again if you pull back. I mean, and historically, which is why. Never mind. I have several pulpits I like to stand on. One of them is the teaching of history and how it should be done and how people hate it. But that's why one reason why we're in the mess we are, because so many people don't get it.
Don't want to hear things. Yeah.
And don't like history
Right.
because it was presented so badly in school.
Yeah.
Can I tell the story of my world history professor who dictated an outline form? This is world history, 10th grade. Outline, Roman numeral 1, capital A, little, so help me, this is how he taught history.
Yep.
Throughout the entire
It was so
year.
linear.
And my sister, 2 years older, had an identical binder when she had him. I mean, he never changed it, and
Yeah.
it's no wonder everybody hated world history.
Well, it was history, so it wasn't going to change, right?
And it's not important.
Until Howard Zinn wrote his histories, and other people wrote the history. That, oh, what a muddle. Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Yep.
Sorry.
Well, and I think that's why people are resisting now the stories, the 1619 Project, and because it confronts that we didn't necessarily get all the facts, ma'am, when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the camp that, well, we should have. Well, how would we have gotten it? We were learning along the way. We were students, and now we get it, and so we can act on that as best we can. We can do our part. But yeah, the refugee story is not one with huge victories, but with little victories, I think. Little ones that matter. I can't imagine not knowing some of the refugees who've come to our area in the past year that we've gotten to meet and know and interact with and learn about their lives. That's been very important. So All right, so, I did have a question here. How might God deliver BCC through this time? Because this is quite a time for the history of our church as we come through this, whatever next section of the pandemic is. But come out of the real traumatizing, the heavy traumatizing where there were bodies in storage containers out in the streets and stuff. We're past that section of it now. We're in a different phase. So, but we know that the church isn't as full as it was before the pandemic on Sunday mornings. We know there are not as many children coming as there were before the pandemic. So what can the remnant, how will God use this remnant who survived to do the next thing? If you could imagine that.
I'd love to see the children here.
Yeah, I would too.
But I was just reading in the paper this morning that in England they were saying that the percentage of Christians in England has diminished, that most people identify themselves with no religion.
Well, the population of England has changed radically over the last
Yeah.
decade. And
As our country has also.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that's, well, in Briarcliff it's true in my lifetime, but over a longer period of time, because when we started coming to this church, this was the vibrant church of the village. This was Wolterlaw's church, which was an integral part of everything that went on in the village, and it remained that way for a long time, even after I came, which was in the late 50s. But the population of the village has changed.
It has.
So has the faith community that this church finds itself in. And the Christian population has shrunk noticeably, as has the commitment to going to church and culture as the way I see it, generally speaking, and the importance of faith, the importance of the family. Don't get me wrong, but things have changed.
Yeah. I think there are people that still think family's important, and
Remnants.
they're the remnants. Yeah, and when we met with the social media person last week to learn how to reach out, we're really targeting now the remnants. We're targeting. The consultant helped us create, basically, or identify an ideal client, an ideal person that we're trying to find. And we called her Jackie. Her name is Jackie. And she's between 30 and 40 years old. She works out of her home. She has 3 kids. She's worried about the relationships that she has with her partner, with her kids. She wants to see her children succeed. But at some point she lost touch with church, and she doesn't really know how to reconnect because what she hears in the media is scary. Church is a scary place. And so everything we put out now on social media is trying to reassure Jackie that we aren't that. We're not perfect, but we don't have those things. We're non-didactic, right? We're not going to make her prescribe to a particular theology to come to this church. But we have some gifts that we can offer her. We have a space that can bring her peace. We have a community that has a wealth of knowledge on parenting tips through the years, things that work, things that didn't work, that we're willing to share with her. We have 45 minutes a week where she can have me time while the kids are learning value lessons from Sunday school. And today I'm going to be launching a thing that says, you know, you probably like doing crafts with your kids, but the worst part is cleaning up afterwards. If you come to our craft fair on Sunday, we'll clean up. You come make crafts with your kids, we'll clean up the glitter. And I hear Londa's got a lot of glitter, so she's bringing a lot of glitter. So I think Jackie will be grateful that there's a place where she can bring her kids, and we'll do the cleanup afterwards. You know, she can spend an hour and her kids will make 7 or 8 projects. Get a nice picture of them in a Santa sleigh with their family, and have a cup of coffee, meet some other parents. And so that's the remnant that we're that we're intentionally speaking to right now on social media, because we believe that we have something to offer them that's unique. And we do. We have relationships with organizations that can help them. We have, you know, so we're kind of a gateway in some ways to those
So what
groups.
bothers me is I know that's how we have to be right now. But we are a church.
Mhm.
We're not a social hall.
Right?
And I'm worried that all this activities that we provide to open to the community are not ones that are going to bring the people into the church. How many people really will bring their child to do a craft, get a cup of coffee, get some cookies or sandwiches or whatever? How many of them will really connect with the church? The church part of it,
Mm.
not the social.
Right.
That's what I'm worried about.
That's what we don't know the answer to.
I know.
But we do know that the other ways we've been trying to reach them don't work.
Right.
So we're trying something new
Yeah.
in hopes
Which
that
is
it will
what
work.
the future is, unfortunately, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the social
I
media,
think we're all around the same age, and we feel that, you know, we want the younger people.
right,
We're tired of being the head of this committee and that committee and all like that. We want the younger families to come in and take those responsibilities over. It's hard.
me too. That's what I want too.
Yeah.
But we have to come at it through a side door now, whereas
Yeah.
it used to be different
Yeah.
how we found people.
I just hope that this will bring some families in. That 30 to 40-year-old or
Yeah.
even 50.
Yeah.
My daughter's nearer 50 than 40.
Well, we're trying. We're trying, and we've got a big push for Christmas coming up too, to invite people to the Blue Christmas service.
Yeah.
We're doing that because Jackie might have losses in her life that she needs a place to
Yeah.
come and remember those and be held in care.
That's when my daughter goes to church.
Yep. And then on Christmas Eve, you know, we'll have a special service that night for all ages, and I'm working up a
Yeah. So back to
Yeah, well, I mean, so that's how I think BCC, God might help deliver us through this time, is partly by trying new things. But God must have delivered BCC through other difficult things through the years, right? You have the most history, perhaps.
There have been cycles.
Yeah. I mean, I'm aware that there was a fallout with the youth group leaders at one point in history, and the Sunday school kind of had a schism at that point. There was some people fell away, and others started coming, and right.
To some extent, yeah, and a lot of it,
Yeah. It wasn't just the Sunday school. I mean, it was youth group and adults. Okay, so
Yeah.
it was just a major disagreement over the whole project.
Yeah.
And what?
And people left, right, as they do.
well, and people who have been active.
Right.
But even before then, there were cycles.
Right. I mean, that's a recent one.
Yeah.
That the church in some ways is still recovering from.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we were recovering, in some ways, we were starting to rebuild a little bit from that. I know over the past 5 years, the Sunday school is getting a little bit bigger, like 1 or 2 kids every year we get extra. And then the pandemic hit and wiped all that off the map.
Yeah.
So before we had a chance to really have a few years of relationship with the families. And the pandemic hurt in lots of different ways. People became, in their fear, became more entrenched in their beliefs, and they weren't able to let go of things as easily, right? We had leadership from on high in our country that was telling people lies, and some people believed that, some people didn't, and that caused schisms in our community. So we've had a lot of disruption in our country, let alone the world. There's been disruption. So I'm counting on God to see us through this time, because God has seen us through other times. So. Okay, so let's verse. You crushed the leader of the land of wickedness. You stripped him from head to foot, which would make him quite vulnerable. With his own spear, you pierced his head when his warriors stormed out to scatter us. It's beautiful imagery there. So God creates chaos for those who would oppress God's people, and even their weapons are turned against them. And the question I want to ask is, do you think God always conquers with violence, or have you seen God turn the tables in other ways? And if you were in church Sunday, you know there's an easy answer to that one that I gave as kind of the punchline to my sermon. If you have any recollection. Barb, you're off the hook.
So I'm like, oh my God.
I know, Janice and Nancy.
Oh my
Do,
God.
do, 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 do. It starts with a do, do, do. Anyone? What did I
Birth of
say?
Jesus.
Jesus, the birth of Jesus. Yes, yes, yes. God turns the tables with the birth of Jesus. Yeah, which is not violent, right?
Well,
I mean, it becomes violent, but not by God. God doesn't turn the tables with violence. People react violently to that, but God doesn't come in and kill people with Jesus. In fact, God gets killed because of who he is through Jesus. So, yeah. So the birth of Jesus is one way that is not violent, that God turns the tables. I think when we take in a refugee through our Open Arms for Refugees program, that's God turning the tables on the violence. I know for one of the first young woman who came to us, she, because we're recording now, was a victim of the Taliban, which was very violent and blew her up. And she was rescued by the United States military, brought to a hospital, and she ended up in our neck of the woods where we're trying to help her now and care for her and help her reestablish her life, or establish life. But she still has family home who are undergoing terrible things at the hands of the Taliban. So, but here, God was able to take her life and move it in nonviolent ways into a new place.
does she have contact with her family?
She has very limited contact because there's no internet is not very available. It's very controlled, and yeah, she doesn't have too much contact. Not as much as she would like. So there are people working to bring her family here, which we hope will happen.
When you say family, do you mean
It's mom and dad.
her parents,
Her
not
parents.
children,
I don't-
not husband? or-
No. Mom and dad. Okay, so let's read verses 16 through 19. And I think that kind of lines us down there. Yeah, 16 through 19. It's the home stretch. Barb, go ahead, turn on the waterworks.
I'll start with 15.
Okay.
When thou dost tread the sea with thy horses, the mighty waters boil. I hear, and my belly quakes. My lips quiver at the sound. Trembling comes over my bones, and my feet totter in their tracks. I sigh for the day of distress to dawn over my assailants. Although the fig tree does not burgeon, the vine.
Well, let's just stop
Okay.
for a second. Habbukuk is actively listening to how God is going to save them. At this point, he heard and his heart pounded, his lips quivered at the sound. He is emotionally impacted by this vision that he's having, or that he's had. When it talks about decay crept into his bones, he's been paralyzed by this vision. And his choice is to wait patiently for the day when the tables will be turned. He's going to wait and he's going to listen. And I think that's, for us in this time in BCC's history, I think that's an important lesson, to listen for opportunities for how God can transform this time for us. I think social media is one way that can happen. I don't think that's all the ways that can happen, but it's one low-hanging fruit that we can say, we can do that immediately. That's something we can do immediately. There's probably other things out there, there are other things out there that we haven't thought of yet, or that we haven't seen God pointing us towards yet. So, Habbukuk allows God to take the lead on this. He has faith that God's going to show him how this is going to unfold. And I think that's important for us to remember, to do. We can feel very anxious,
We need to wait.
or
And act.
we can take a breath and say, it doesn't feel great right now, but God's going to help us. We need to listen for where God's going to lead us to try something different than we've been doing, because the things we've done aren't working now, right? So some of them are working a little better than others, but some things are not working. And so we need to just listen and take and try the things that we hear God leading us towards, that God reveals.
More than once throughout the study of this book, I've been struck by Habbukuk's realization, his natural instinct to want it now,
Yes.
but then he realizes that's not the way it works, and he's going to have to wait.
Yeah.
And they have to wait as people. And the time, in this next sentence, I sigh for the day of distress to dawn over my assailants. I mean, he's waiting.
He's taking a deep breath, a sigh.
But that spoke to me.
And he goes
because
back and forth.
He does. But just like.
As do we.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we live in such a do-it-now world where everybody, particularly younger people, which is anybody below younger than me, are used to having internet fast and
Sure.
click and it's done. And they're even farther down the path of wanting it now than anybody in biblical times could possibly have been, I'm pretty sure. Because everything in their life is like instantaneous, or at least
Yep.
that's the expectation.
Yes.
Instant.
And it ain't real.
It's flip the switch theology. You know, we'll just flip it and it will have a light.
And that's not real.
We won't be in the dark anymore. And that's just not how
No.
theology works. That's not how
Right.
God's time is different
Yeah.
from our time. And so he waits patiently. He sighs for the day when the thing that's troubling him, God's going to show him the way out of that. And then he reflects on that. Though the fig tree does not bud and there are no grapes on the vines, which would not be a good thing, right, for an agricultural community. Though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. So despite even economic and social devastation, Habbukuk rejoices. He finds that because he has this vision that God's going to ultimately deliver them. So even though everything around him looks horrible, it's this hope, this spiritual hope that he's carrying. That he'll be okay. He'll be okay. And I think for us, Habbukuk didn't have a resurrection to fall back on. Right? He didn't have the experience of Jesus that he could call on. We have that. We can say, oh no, look, even death gets taken care of. It can be sad, it can be devastating, it can hurt us to our soul, but there is something more. There is new life, the promise of new life from Jesus, the promise that the love in this life continues on into the next and keeps us tethered to those people who we love. I think that's where that joy is, that we can find that joy. Are there other places that we can find it in our modern times?
Well, different kind of joy, but the thing that he is showing, I think, that speaks to me anyway, is that hope. And that hope is, it can change everything. It can change, you can look past the crisis of the moment if you know that this will not be eternity, things will get better.
Right.
And we have that promise. I mean,
We have the promise and we also have the patterns that show us that that happens,
Exactly.
right? If we can step out of our moment, which is grim, and say, but in the past God's delivered, so why wouldn't God do that now? That's what God does.
I think the Christmas season brings joy.
I think so too.
You know, I think even for people who are non-believers, start to feel joy
Mm-hmm.
in the season. Even if they don't, they probably do put up a Christmas tree, they probably do the gifts and all like that, because that brings them joy.
Sure.
And seeing the joy on children's faces when you do the traditional things and the patterns and all that are from their past maybe.
Yep.
Even though they don't do it now, it's, that rhythm of the Christmas season.
Right. Yeah, I think for
And they
many.
started right after right after Halloween.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. After Labor Day, they put them up.
I always say to my husband, no Christmas music until after Thanksgiving.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I think you guys you're all right on target there. So he ends with, in the NIV, the sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. I think if you open your Bibles to Psalm 18, that's middle of our Bibles. Verses 32 and 33. Let's see. Yeah.
Which song?
Psalm 18. He's kind of echoing the psalmist here. He concludes with this echo. Someone want to read that? Psalm 18, verses 32 and 33.
The God who girded me with strength and made my way safe. He made my feet like the feet of a deer and set me secure on the heights.
Have you seen deer climbing up the mountains? They're very secure, very secure. So there's that sense of stability that he leaves his readers with. For the director of music on my stringed instruments. So that tells us it was supposed to be sung again and again by the people with stringed instruments. So he starts in a very dark place, but he comes out that God's got this. God's got this. I know there are, this has been throughout my whole ministry, people sometimes think I take things very lightly, and when things aren't going great at the church, and I'm taking them lightly, but that's not true. But I do have this sense of faith. I do have this sense that God's delivered the church before, and God's going to deliver us now. So we just have to look for the leverage points. We have to look for the doors to open that we can walk through, sometimes kicking and screaming, but if we can go through easily, that's nice. And I've seen the church bounce back from terrible things, I had on Mother's Day one year, the whole choir quit at the end of the service. They just walked out. They had a tantrum. The organist she took them all with them to the Methodist church across the street on Mother's Day one year. They didn't like something I was doing, and they just staged a walkout. She played a lot of angry music and stuff, and the church was like confused, and it felt like, ooh, are we going to survive this? But we had been through a couple other things before that, and I thought, well, this is a pretty bad time. And I would go in and I go, no, we'll get through this. We're going to get through it. This is terrible, but we'll get through this. And we did. We ended up coming through very strongly, and the church grew. And, now the church has been without a minister for 3 years. And they have continued being a vital part of the community. They hold worship, and their lay leaders do the sermons, and they serve communion themselves, and they've even baptized a child by themselves. And because they believe that they're a church community, they need to offer these things to those who come, and so they do it. They've had guest ministers stop in and help them out with sermons once a month or something in the past year, but for the most part, they're doing it on their own, and that's because they're strong. You know, they realize they've been through a lot, and they keep on searching for a minister, but they haven't gotten one yet. So, not that I hope that will be the fate of BCC. Nancy, you'll have to preach every other week. Oh dear God. So the challenge of Habbukuk is to grow in faith so that we can experience joy and strength while we wait for deliverance. That's kind of the challenge he sets down before us. So how do we find that joy that he ends with in our own spiritual lives and in the life of our church? How do we do that?
Is he really ending with joy? Everybody.
It literally says, I will be joyful in God and my Lord, my Savior. I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God, my Savior. God will set me on great heights like a deer. I'd call that joy. What would you call it?
Acceptance, patience, waiting. Yeah, okay, I'll buy it. Joy.
I'll buy acceptance and waiting is part, but that's part of the joy, I think, for him, is that I know in my own ministry, maybe you've done this, when you're waiting for something to change for the better, we can spend our time imagining all the ways that God's going to open doors for us. We can think about what that time will be like when things are better, when the pews are full again, or when there's children teeming around me, or some other minister, on Sunday mornings. The Sunday school is overflowing. We have to open up a new wing. We can dream of those things, and that puts a smile on your face,
Yeah.
right? It does. And I think that is part of hope, is being able to, because the opposite is despair, right? That it's not going to get better, that we're dead in the water, and God's given up on us. That's really the opposite, I think, of where he ends. It's not where he starts. He starts that God's given up on him and given up on Judah. But that's not where he ends. And I hope it's not where we end.
Just with looking at a note I had made, and I think it applies to the whole book of Habbukuk. He went from anger and wrath to salvation to deliverance.
Yeah.
He went from anger to wrath, and then that towards the end, he sees salvation and deliverance.
Yep. And he's encouraging his community to see the same thing.
Same thing.
Right?
You are.
He's sharing that.
What you are doing.
I'm trying
You're
to, Janice. I
Yeah.
think some folks are hearing it more clearly than others, but I am trying to encourage that, God's going to see us through this. God's going to see us through this. I believe that with all my heart. God's going to see us through. I don't think God's going to see us through by January 1st. Maybe, but I don't expect that. But I do think that God's going to work with us to get through this time. We'll look back and go, oh, imagine we got through that. The minister left us for 3 months to go on sabbatical in the middle of this mess. Oh, what are we doing? But that's part of the trust process, right?
Well, just as soon as we think we've got everything figured out, things change.
The pieces move.
Inevitably.
The pieces move. That's right. That's right. There you go. Oh, boy, I thought I knew what I was doing. Well, that was during the pandemic. It felt like we would get to a place where we thought, okay, we can do this, and then another piece would change, and we'd have to regroup and restructure everything. And I have much more faith that this year we'll be together on Christmas Eve than last year. Remember last year? That was horrible.
Pull
What
the
time
plug
are
at the
these
last
Christmas
minute.
Eve services?
7 o'clock. One service at 7 o'clock. We'll all gather. Who
I'll be
can?
there Sunday morning instead.
On Christmas Day?
Yeah.
Want to
Okay.
be the greeter?
Want to be the greeter? You might be greeting
greeting
yourself.
yourself.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you need me Christmas Day, I'll be there.
Oh, aren't you sweet?
God bless you. That's great. I think you've been signed up, so.
She's going to be this Sunday too.
That's it.
You're a
I have a
pro.
question though. The event on the 11th, the manger,
Yeah, the living
is
nativity.
that quite popular?
Yes. No, we've never done it before.
No, I'm in charge of cookies. I
Oh,
want to know how many
you know what?
cookies
I think after this Sunday we'll have a better sense of
Okay.
if people are going to
That'll
come.
be good.
Yeah. I would guess it'll be about the same size as, well, I was saying to John, I think we may have a few less this time because Halloween is interfaith.
Yes,
Christmas nativity is not,
yeah,
and an Advent workshop is not. It's
yeah.
really zeroing in on anyone who identifies
Yeah,
as
we'll see how
Christian.
many come and we'll say, maybe
About that number-ish.
ask people if they're going to come
Yeah.
next Sunday.
Yeah, I think we'll hand them little cards inviting them to come
Yeah,
to that. So.
okay.
Or letting them know it's happening.
Because I don't buy I make cookies, I don't buy
Okay. Yeah.
I like to make them.
Great.
Okay, that's.
Yeah. Plus, we'll have the adults there.
Yeah,
So we'll have the congregation will be there after church too. This Sunday. So
What time is it? On the 11th?
on the 11th, that's at
4:30.
4:30. 4:30 to 5:30.
If I can bake more cookies for you, I will.
No, I like making cookies. Thank you anyway. And I'm supposed to bring hot chocolate, or bring chocolate milks to make hot chocolate.
Yeah, we'll warm it up in the coffee makers.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be nice. You just can't have it too hot that it will leave some cold
and
on the
I'll
side.
bake it, and I'll bring some marshmallows.
Yeah, marshmallows, that'll be good. Yeah, the kids will love it. Yeah, so that'd be good. And we have our new banner up on front of the church that
Yeah.
says what time our service is at. So we're trying.
Yep.
We're trying. Well, thank you all for sticking with this, and appreciate your conversations and insights. Have been great. And we'll take a rest now till the spring. Well, we'll be busy with other things till the spring. How about that? We'll be busy to other things.
And don't walk out on Sunday, the
So-
choir. I don't want to see the choir.
Yeah, no marching out in a huff on Sunday.
Oh.
It was so bizarre. Fortunately, I'd been tipped off, so I knew it was coming. So I personally wasn't shattered, but I couldn't really communicate that to the whole church that was going to happen. So
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. That was an orchestrated event. I mean,
I have a question.
it was completely.
In the bulletin, it always says for the organist, she's interim. Is she going to be,
We don't know.
we don't,
Yeah, we don't know if she wants to stay.
oh, okay.
And
I
we
didn't know
also-
if it was our part that we were trying her out.
It's both parts.
Okay.
It's both parts. Yeah, we're
Okay,
after in January the music committee
we'll
is gonna.
reevaluate.
Well, they're going to ask the congregation what they, we've had a little bit of a break from Fimi style,
Yeah,
and so we'll ask the congregation what they would like to hear on Sundays, and what kind of music, the congregation including the choir, obviously,
yeah.
and they're going to do a poll just to kind of get a sense and see if that matches up with what Dawn brings, or if we need to throw our nets further. We have other candidates who we interviewed the last time round. And so that, if they're available still, then if we're looking beyond Dawn, they would be people we'd get in touch with again. So
Yeah.
we might be able to narrow it down because we'll have the guidance of the congregation. So, all right. But no decisions have been made this time.
That sounds good.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day.
Are we leaving the chairs in place?
Yeah,
And the possibility
for the
that
crowd
people
that'll come tonight in the rain.
Yeah, we should set up some folding chairs too.
We probably should, yeah. For Anita to be online, maybe even soggy over here.